Wait, is that a giant hunk of scrap metal headed our way? The crew of the Varan cruiser couldn't believe their eyes. They were staring at the view screen, a collection of mismatched, jagged metal plates awkwardly bolted together into what could only be described as a monstrosity. It was massive, certainly, but there was no way it could be considered a threat, not by their standards anyway. "Is this some kind of joke?" snorted Commander Varley, his blue-scaled face twisting in confusion. "Are the humans really expecting to fight us with whatever that thing is?" "Scanners are detecting multiple energy signatures, sir," said Lieutenant Clav, his voice betraying the disbelief he shared with the rest of the crew. "But they're weak, nothing compared to our shields or weapons. It's like they've cobbled together everything they could find and called it a warship." Commander Varley leaned back in his chair, rubbing his chin with a clawed hand. The Galactic Dominion had encountered humans before, and they were nothing if not resourceful. But this was either a desperate last stand or a pathetic attempt at deception. Either way, it wouldn't be enough to stop the Dominion's advance. "Send a message to the fleet," Varley ordered. "Prepare for a full assault. Let's put these humans out of their misery." Across the cold expanse of space, the human warship lurched forward, its engines sputtering and belching out thick plumes of exhaust. Inside, Captain Jonas Bennett stood on the bridge, surrounded by his equally mismatched crew. Men of all shapes, sizes, and backgrounds, each with the same determined look on their faces. "Status report," Sergeant Bennett said, his voice calm despite the chaos around him. Sergeant Ortega, a burly man with a thick beard and a cybernetic arm, tapped away at the console. "All systems are online, Captain." "Barely, but they're holding together. Weapons are charged, shields at 50%, and the reactor. Well, let's just hope it doesn't blow us to pieces before they do." Bennett nodded, taking in the sight of his ragtag crew. They were far from the polished, well-trained soldiers of the Galactic Dominion, but they had something the aliens didn't. A willingness to do whatever it took to survive, even if that meant building a warship out of whatever they could scavenge from the remains of their decimated fleet. "Good. Let's show these lizards what humans can do when we're backed into a corner." The warship shuddered as it pushed forward, its haphazard design barely holding together under the strain. But it moved, and that was enough. The Dominion fleet was closing in, their sleek, deadly ships forming a tight formation around the human vessel. "Sir, they're in range," Ortega reported. "Shall we fire?" Bennett glanced at the screen, the alien ship's shimmering hulls reflecting the light of distant stars. They were everything his ship was not: beautiful, deadly, and seemingly invincible. But appearances could be deceiving. "Not yet," Bennett replied. "Let them get closer. I want them to see what we've got up our sleeves." The Dominion ships did just that, confident in their superiority as they moved in for the kill. Varley watched from his command chair, a cruel smile spreading across his face. "Pathetic," he muttered. "Fire at will." The Varan cruiser unleashed a barrage of plasma bolts, each one capable of reducing a ship to molten slag in seconds. The rest of the fleet followed suit, a wave of destruction hurtling toward the human vessel. "Now!" Bennett shouted. Ortega slammed his fist down on the console, and the human warship exploded with light. The Dominion's plasma bolts struck the warship's shields, but instead of vaporizing the ship, they were absorbed, funneled directly into the reactor. The ship shuddered violently, but it held, the energy being stored and amplified by the reactor's unstable design. "Captain, the reactor's overloading!" Ortega yelled over the cacophony of alarms. "Good," Bennett replied with a grim smile. "Redirect all power to the main cannon. Let's give them a taste of their own medicine." The warship's makeshift cannon powered up, drawing on the unstable energy stored within the reactor. The barrel, little more than a hollowed-out chunk of reinforced steel, glowed with an eerie blue light as it prepared to fire. Fire! A blinding beam of energy shot out from the cannon, cutting through space and slamming into the Varan cruiser. The Dominion ship's shields flared brightly, struggling to contain the energy, but they were no match for the raw power of the human weapon. The beam punched through the shields, through the hull, and out the other side, leaving a gaping hole in the cruiser's side. "Direct hit!" Ortega shouted. "The cruiser's losing power. Their shields are down." Bennett allowed himself a brief moment of satisfaction before barking out his next order. "Target the next ship. We're not done yet." The human warship Lur ched forward again, its cannon still glowing as it lined up its next target. The Dominion fleet, stunned by the sudden reversal, scrambled to regroup, but it was too late. The humans had the advantage now, and they weren't about to let it slip away. Varley, his face a mask of disbelief, watched as his fleet was torn apart by the human vessel. His ship's systems were failing, the once mighty cruiser now nothing more than a floating wreck. The realization hit him like a physical blow. They had underestimated the humans, and now they were paying the price. "Fall back," he ordered, his voice shaking. "All ships, retreat." But it was no use. The human warship, despite its ramshackle appearance, was relentless. It tore through the Dominion fleet like a predator among prey, each shot from its cannon reducing another ship to smoldering debris. And on the bridge of that warship, Captain Bennett stood tall, his eyes fixed on the screen. The battle was far from over, but he knew one thing for certain. Today, humanity had shown the galaxy what they were truly capable of. The Dominion fleet was in disarray. What had started as a confident advance had turned into a desperate scramble for survival. The human warship, still belching smoke and sparks from its cobbled-together hull, continued to wreak havoc on the alien ships. Each shot from its overcharged cannon carved out chunks of hull, sending debris spiraling into the void. "Captain, they're trying to retreat," Ortega reported, his eyes flicking over the sensor readouts. "They're regrouping, but it looks like they're in full panic mode." "Don't let up," Bennett replied, his voice steady. "Keep the pressure on. We can't give them a chance to regroup." He knew that their victory, while stunning, was far from secure. The Dominion ships outnumbered them 10-1, and even though they'd managed to take down several, the odds were still stacked against them. The human warship, as formidable as it was, couldn't sustain this level of combat for long. The reactor was overloading. The hull was barely holding together, and the crew was exhausted. But they had no choice. "It's do or die. Target the lead ship," Bennett ordered. "If we can take out their command, the rest might scatter." The warship's cannon powered up again, its glow even more intense as it drew on the last reserves of energy from the reactor. The barrel creaked ominously, the metal straining under the pressure. Ortega adjusted the targeting systems, locking on to the largest of the remaining Dominion ships, the flagship of their fleet. "Locked on," Captain Ortega confirmed, firing in 3, 2, 1. The cannon fired. The beam of energy surged forth with a ferocity that outmatched the previous shots. It streaked across the battlefield, closing the distance in an instant, and striking the Dominion flagship dead center. The ship's shields, already weakened from the earlier engagement, barely lasted a second before they collapsed. The beam punched through the ship's armor, causing explosions to ripple along its length. The bridge of the Dominion flagship was a scene of chaos. Commander Varley had been thrown from his command chair by the impact, his blue scales scorched from a console that had exploded in front of him. He struggled to his feet, staring in horror at the damage reports flooding in. The ship was lost. There was no saving it now. "Abandoned ship," Varley shouted, his voice hoarse. "All hands, evacuate." But it was too late. The human warship's cannon had done its job. The Dominion flagship began to break apart, pieces of it tearing away as secondary explosions ripped through the vessel. Varley could only watch helplessly as his command crumbled around him. Back on the human warship, the crew cheered as the Dominion flagship was destroyed. But their victory was short-lived. "Captain, the reactor's critical," Ortega yelled over the din of alarms. "If we don't shut it down now, we're going to blow ourselves to pieces." Bennett clenched his fists, his mind racing. They'd come so far, but they couldn't afford to lose the ship now, not when they had the Dominion on the run. "Divert all non-essential power to the reactor's cooling systems," Bennett ordered. "Cut life support if you have to, but keep that reactor stable." Ortega nodded and got to work, rerouting power and shutting down everything that wasn't absolutely necessary. The lights on the bridge dimmed, and the temperature began to drop as the life support systems powered down. The crew worked in near darkness, their breath visible in the cold air, but they didn't complain. They knew what was at stake. Slowly, the reactor began to stabilize. The cannon's glow faded, and the ship's systems started to come back online. "Reactor's stable," Captain Ortega reported, his voice filled with relief. Bennett nodded, a small smile playing on his lips. "Good. Now let's finish this." With their flagship destroyed, the remaining Dominion ships broke ranks and scattered, retreating into the depths of space. The human warship, battered and smoking but still standing, drifted in the silence of the aftermath. The crew cheered, their shouts echoing through the ship. They had done the impossible. They had stood up to the might of the galactic dominion and won. Bennett looked around at his crew, pride swelling in his chest. They had proven that humanity was not to be underestimated, that even in the face of overwhelming odds, they could fight back and win. "Let's head home," Bennett said, his voice filled with determination. "We've got a lot of work to do. This was just the beginning."